What's going on, guys? Tucker Bierman here, one of the owners and operator of Refined Tile and Design, coming to you on the Refining Exchange podcast. We're starting a new series called Under the Surface, where we talk to local business owners, operators, entrepreneurs in Wilmington, North Carolina, specifically in the residential trades. So we're excited to bring to you a couple of these stories, a couple of these business owners that service the area and that we love to get to work with. What's going on, guys? Tucker Bierman here with Refining Exchange, here with Kasey Smith with Kasey Smith Interiors. Thanks for coming out.
I'm excited to be here.
Yes. So we've talked a bunch over the past couple of years as you've gotten your design firm started here in Wilmington. So just as it revolves around Wilmington as a whole, when did you move to Wilmington?
So I moved to Wilmington January of 2020. Timing's kind of crazy.
That's crazy.
But I grew up in like the Raleigh area.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. That's cool. And then you moved here with Zach?
I did.
Your husband?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yes. We met in 5th grade. So we've known each other our whole lives. Yeah. But we were married for a couple of years before we moved here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
No. It's kind of a funny story how we ended up getting here. We both grew up in like the Apex Cary, Raleigh area. We went to school together and ended up in Wilmington after living in a van for a year.
Oh, nice.
We could not figure out where we wanted to live. Kind of went up and down the West Coast and loved a lot of the surf breaks over there. Looked at real estate, realized it was absurd. Yeah. And our family's all on this coast. So we fell in love with Wilmington and ended up settling down here. Yeah.
Thanks. So you lived the dream there for a year, though.
You say that. We were 96 square feet for 2 full-grown humans and a golden retriever. So
yeah, that's so funny. And that was your first year of marriage?
That was, let's see, about a year and some change into marriage. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Are you a surfer?
I am a surfer.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Are you?
No, gosh. No.
Okay.
No.
You should be. You live in Wilmington.
Have you seen there's sharks out there?
I have, actually.
Okay.
I still get out there. It's worth it.
Yeah, I'll have to, someone would have to coerce me to get me out there. So we'll see. Maybe one day.
We'll get you on a wave storm, put you into a few waves.
Yes.
Fun.
We'll see. I'm getting scared right now just thinking about that. So you guys moved to Wilmington. At what point were you like doing design, and when did you transition to like wanting to start a business?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's a good question, and it's interesting. I definitely did not have a linear process into getting into the interior design industry. I don't know if I've caught you up on any of my story, but I knew from a young age I wanted to be in the creative field, and I actually went to college at NC State for graphic design. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of going to be it for me. A few years into college, I learned actually from my husband now, who was my boyfriend, a lot about photography, and I fell in love with photography. So I actually started a photography business while in college, and totally fell in love with that process. Loved like being able to be a part of like, you know, the more intimate experiences in people's lives, like capturing portraits specifically, and weddings were kind of my bread and butter. Yeah. Fell in love with like building a business and learning the behind the scenes of that too. Yeah. And towards the end of my graphic design degree, I was like, okay, graphic design is not it. I had tried like working in corporate graphic design. I've tried like, I was a calligrapher for a little while. I did like fine art. I like tried everything under the moon, and was like, okay, I'm going to give this photography thing a try. So I was a photographer for 7 years professionally before I got anywhere close to interior design. I didn't know that. Yeah. I think it's more common for a business owner to probably have worked in the field before starting their business. So I was a little bit over optimistic about how easy that would be. Yeah. But kind of an interesting way. And I think all of those little pieces of my history play a role in my interior design approach today. But it definitely was not something that was on my radar until like 2019. Wow. Yeah.
So when I picked up your story, you were, you had moved, or you were in the process of moving to Wilmington, I guess 2019, 2020, when you were designing your in-laws house, right? Was that your first project?
It was one of my first projects.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how was that? Like, was that in that kind of transition point where you were like, hey, this is a passion that I could actually see myself doing long-term?
Yeah. I mean, I wish it was that clear cut. I talked about being in the van a little bit. So backstory on that was kind of my first interior design project. If I really reflect on it, it's interesting. We hired a company to build out our van. Yeah. And I don't think I like processed it at the time that it was like interior design that I was doing.
Yeah.
But I was like sending him mood boards and like putting together floor plans and renderings and like
he's like, I just want to be in the van out there,
right.
do whatever you want.
I was like, how do I fit a 10-foot longboard in this van? Like I had to like draw all these like tiny small scale specifics. But I was obsessed with the process. I didn't really comprehend that's what I was doing. And so we lived in the van for a year, and towards the end of that, we were kind of like, okay, we've done this for a year. I don't really know if photography is going to be like a full-time thing for me. I don't know. Like it was like paying the bills well, gave us a lot of freedom on the weekdays and ability to travel, which was amazing. But I think I was always kind of longing for more just like of a mental challenge, something that was not just like actively creative, but also required more of like a logical process to it, which is
really cool, by the way, that you have such a like your like brain, it seems like, is like split. You have like this like creative side and then this like operational, like almost like business side, which is like awesome because usually people are either one side or the other.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely feel like I've always leaned more on the creative side of things, but when I was diving full into that, I definitely craved a little bit of the other side. I think part of that also is my design degree. We did a lot of like logical thinking and like business planning almost in a sense, and design thinking, and I found that really fascinating. But I don't know. I look back on how I got into the interior design industry, and it doesn't really make a ton of sense. I just like look back and I'm like, the Lord obviously had a plan for me, and like there was no explanation other than that when it came to like the timeline of things, because we were relying almost 100% on wedding photography income in, January of 2020. And guess what crashed in March of 2020? The wedding industry. And so actually at the beginning of 2020 is kind of when I had that mental shift where I was like, maybe I'm going to try interior design as like my thing. And I actually ended up finding a job with Havenly and Modsy. I worked for both of them for a little while. I don't know if you're familiar.
Havenly sounds very familiar, but I don't know why I know that name. Yeah,
you've probably seen an ad for it online or something. It's
because they're like an online design company where you could like hire them remotely, kind of thing.
It's like an e-design. It's like a cheaper way to hire an interior designer.
Which came, that was a big deal in 2020.
It was.
Right? So
it was. I mean, the interior design industry boomed in 2020.
You can't get out of your house. I know. You better fix your house.
I know. I like got into the industry at the perfect time. But I worked for those e-design companies for a little while and kind of got my feet wet. And then we had a family friend who was building a house up north and did not hire an interior designer. And that's when I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make it happen. I'll help you out. I didn't charge her a dime, but I learned a ton doing that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dang, so you did it for free. That's amazing.
It's kind of crazy thinking back on it.
But think about the opportunity.
It was an amazing opportunity.
Yeah. And I think I remember, I've seen pictures of that house because I remember when you were starting to post on Instagram when you had come down here that it was like a really pretty, like kind of like Cape style house. I mean, I don't know what the style would be called, but like Maine, like there was a lot of texture and stuff. So I'm sure you got a lot of experiencing.
I did. Yeah. And I think she had never built a house before, and I had obviously never dealt with building a house before, so I had no idea what I was getting myself into, but we were able to kind of go through that process together and learn, and there was no pressure on me. I wasn't charging her anything, so if I made a mistake, it was kind of like, okay, shrug it off, on to the next thing. Best way to learn is just get your hands dirty, right? So
as long as you don't cost them money.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you found kind of your creative, well, obviously the platform for your creativity, but then like talk about like your creative style, because I really admire, and I've told you this before, your design style is very unique. So kind of talk about like I don't know if you had to explore that, kind of find your way with that, or was that just something natural that you were attracted to?
Thank you. Yeah. I think it is definitely a natural thing to a certain extent, but it took me a while to find that. And so I am glad I worked for like Havenly and Modsy, because part of that experience was that I designed every single style under the sun. There was no like someone could select you and want like glam, and the next day you'd be designing a farmhouse, and the next day you'd be designing. So I got to kind of try all of those styles and figure out what came naturally to me, and typically what you gravitate towards personally. I think like fashion is a huge representation of maybe like your interior design taste, or I don't know what comes naturally to me as a designer.
Gosh, people would hate my design taste.
What?
Just kidding.
No. What, athleisure?
Yeah, I mean,
interior design.
Yeah, same black polo every single day.
Yeah. I mean, I wear black 99% of the time too, but
yeah.
I think it comes
It's called
pretty
minimalist,
natural.
right?
Yes, minimalist. Yeah. So laid back, minimalist.
That's right.
Yeah. I don't know. My interior design taste is, I think part of my success, honestly, is due to the fact that my taste is a little bit different than people in this area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when I first moved here, I tried to kind of fit the mold of like, oh, I'm in a coastal town. I should like use blue and white and preppy colors and try to do this very like clean, happy style. And over the years, I've kind of refined it to a point where I'm realizing I am much more drawn to like lived in warm textures and layers and like what maybe might lend itself to more of like a mountain feel a lot of the time, lots of woods and coziness and more of like a peaceful aesthetic rather than like a high energy, bright, like that kind of thing. Yeah. And I think that's also a reflection of how I want to live in my home. And that's what comes naturally to me because that's what I would do in my own home. Yeah. A lot of the time when I'm designing for clients, I'm just designing my own dream home. So that's kind of how it's evolved over time. And I think as a designer, you don't really stay in the same lane throughout your entire career. I'm sure that will evolve more as time goes on. But
well, and resources change, right?
Right.
I mean, there's new products that come out all the time. And
right.
Trends and stuff change. Kind of, I'm going to keep you there for a second because I think it's really important. Have you, or kind of speak to maybe the struggle in trying to please the client? Because I'm sure you've gotten some clients that want to have more of a coastal fun, bright, vibrant colors while also staying true to who you are as a designer.
Yeah, it's definitely a push and pull. And at the end of the day, the client is the most important. Like, I want the client to be happy. There is like, period. Like, if I maybe am not like in love with the selection, but it's like their favorite thing in the entire house, they're going to get it. Like, no questions asked. However, I've been pretty intentional as I grow my brand to share projects that represent what I want to do in the future. So I've definitely had projects where maybe like I've designed 15 rooms, but I only share 2 of them. And that's not because I don't love the other spaces I designed. I'm proud of them. They're beautiful spaces. The client is obsessed with them. But maybe like in the future, I'd rather book a client who's gonna want to do more of a wood tone than like all grays, or I don't want to design another pink room, so maybe I won't share the pink room, that kind of thing. So it's not that I like refuse to do things that are not up my alley, but I've been able to have the ability to become more selective and understand clients' tastes prior to booking them now. When I first started, it was like, oh, yes to everything. I need to make money. I need to pay the bills. And now I've gotten to the point where I want to make sure their personality fit. And they also have an understanding of my aesthetic. And part of that is just tailoring what I share to be exactly what I want to do in the future.
Yeah, that's really good. Well, and I think that it sums up what a lot of young entrepreneurs go through, right? When you're trying to figure out like, what is your lane? What is your dream client? And you have to work through, I need these opportunities to, like you said, grow. And as you mature in business and stuff, you kind of find your lane, so to speak, and like what you feel very comfortable doing. And then like your brand is doing now is like, it's kind of like representing itself and speaks for itself. And so the clients that you want to work with are going to be attracted to that. And obviously those opportunities present themselves. I think saying no to clients, which I just left another conversation talking about this, like saying no to clients sounds, kind of ridiculous or whatever, or arrogant. I'm not sure. But with context, it's like, hey, this may just not be the best partnership for what you want. And obviously for what we're really good at. I was talking to another designer yesterday. She was like, if someone came to me and was like, hey, like, will you design my restaurant? Like, I could figure it out, but there's other designers in town that may be more, set up for that. And so I think if you want the best for the clients, I think that's a very professional conversation to have. And then obviously for a business, if you want to save yourself maybe some headaches of I don't know, making clients happy, like if you're, having those conversations on the front end, it can be very helpful too. So yeah, that's really good. So in that same vein, as you've grown in your style, you've added some team members. Yeah. So obviously, I work with Kara a lot now. You hired an intern over the summer that I know pretty well too. So talk about that as you've like added team members and kind of built your firm, so to speak. Yeah. What does that look like, and what are some of the learnings that have come with that?
I mean, it's a lot. It's I think I've had to become really okay with growing slowly.
Yeah.
I think when I see other firms and I'm like, they have 10 people on staff and, they've been doing this for 5 years. I should look like that.
Yeah.
I think that's a natural tendency to feel, but I've found that in my business, growing slowly has been amazing, and being really intentional about who I work with and who I hire has been a huge part of why I've been successful. Yeah. I've humbled myself to the point to know that I'm not going to be good at everything. Yeah. And I have a lot of downfalls and weaknesses. And I also have a lot of strengths. And I want to focus on my strengths as much as possible. And I want to hire for my weaknesses. Yeah. And in my case specifically, I think not going to school and having like very formal training in interior design is one of my weaknesses. Mm-hmm. One of my strengths is that I didn't go to school, because I also have creative freedom in a way that other designers might not have. But because I did not get the formal training in CAD or SketchUp or some of that technology, I hired for that. So Kara does a lot of our like technical stuff. That's something I could learn. Yeah. I could do it. I'm sure I would be okay at it, but like, I'm never going to be the best at that. I might figure it out, but
we're the most passionate about
right,
it.
exactly. I don't want to burn myself out either. So focusing on my strengths, hiring people for my weaknesses. So I have Kara, and then I have an accountant, thank God, too, because I don't want to be doing that all the time.
Yeah, it's like, I've actually enjoyed finance in my business, but the depth of it is, it's so challenging. You start forecasting things. And, I really like that, hiring for your weaknesses. I mean, I've heard similar like kind of one-liners with that. The other thing I really like that you said is, and a business mentor has given me this, is grow deeper, not taller, to support your growth long-term and saving you from a lot of headaches, like, making sure like you're growing at a stable pace. Yes. It's something that I've struggled with, because I want to get there, I want to achieve, and it can create different, you miss hires and, right. And different growth challenges. And like, why are you
wanting to do this, right? Is it like, I just want to look like I have it all together? Or do you like genuinely want to be managing 30 people? Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's a question I've been struggling with as I try to forecast what my business is going to look like in the future, is like, do I want more than 5 people at the table in my firm ever? Maybe that's what like the world's idea of success is. But for me, like, I don't know if I want a massive firm with 4 buildings,
Well, this is a good time to transition. So you got a little one.
I do have a little one.
Yeah. So how have you balanced that? You talk about growth and making sure you guys are putting out a good product and a good experience for your clients. How are you doing with parenting a 2-year-old and running a business? Yeah.
I mean, you know how this is. It's not easy. And
well, there's more on you than for the husbands, but
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. Oh man. I think the hard thing with balance is that typically day to day there isn't a balance. I think maybe year long there's a balance, and month long maybe there's a balance, but day to day I've found that like the scale's going to shift. It's going to tip one way or another almost every single day. Yeah. Some days that looks like I'm on site installing for 10 hours and I come home and I see my baby for 1 hour and I'm like sad about it. But then the next day, maybe I take 2 hours in the morning to spend time with him and go to work later and come home earlier, It's all about shifting your intention day to day and making sure that you're taking care of yourself too. I love my baby boy so much. And I think like family is always going to be the most important thing for me, and making sure I have that perspective and not get caught in business day to day is really important. I love what I do so much, which is like such a gift. And I'm sure you probably feel this way too. It's so hard not to be like fully engrossed in it because you love it so much. Yeah. But I find myself unfulfilled and burnt out at the end of the day if I don't spend time slowing down and being present with my family. So doing that, and then also being intentional about maintaining hobbies. So surfing, like we were talking about, or like going to play golf with my husband, and prioritizing those relationships above everything else. That's what's going to be there at the end of the day, and that's what's important. So
I love that. Yeah. Well, you almost reverse engineer it as you're growing your business. You consider those things. I definitely don't have the answer, but yes, I'm definitely in that too, of trying to figure out the balance, because they grow up fast. I got a 4-year-old. I blinked and she, you know what I mean? She went from 1 to 4. You got 2, and you're kind of spread out. Oh gosh. You're starting to play some defense, and I think another good thing for me, just a tactical thing, has been putting my phone in my room when I get home. Yeah. I feel like when I don't do that, I bring it home, and having some clear divides between what home life is and what work life is. It's been really healthy for me.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So another thing, I love like your situation. Zach's an entrepreneur too.
Uh-huh.
So speak to having two business owners at home.
Yeah. So Zach, he's an incredibly gifted surfboard shaper.
Yeah.
He is also an artist.
I don't like surfboards, but I've seen his work and it's like crazy. And I know some people that have
way
ridden
cooler
his
than
boards.
me. He's so good at what he does. But he also works in sales full time.
Okay.
So that's a balance in itself,
That's
knowing that he is busy all day. And then there's another thing he wants to do sometimes in the evening.
Yeah.
He's an amazing father and he's so good at balancing the two. And sales luckily has flexibility in knowing that like, if you hit your numbers, you kind of have a little bit of wiggle room in your timing at least. But having two entrepreneurs is a lot. For a while, we did work together when I was a wedding photographer. We were doing it together. So we kind of can see how both of us have strengths and weaknesses in business ownership. And he's definitely lends himself more to like the creative part of it and not the business running part of it. So I even take some of that work off of his plate still.
Nice.
Doing some of the business back end side of
Really?
it. So it's funny. We make it work. He's so good at it and we love it. So it's just an easy little something else to do on the side that brings us joy. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that so much. And and it seems, I don't know Zach super well, but it seems like he's very present. And at the end of the day, you know, what you have at home is something that supports, again, growing deeper, not taller. I mean, if you're trying to, you know what I mean? If you want to bring your best self to work, you need to make sure you're taking care of all of that stuff. So
easy to say, right?
Yes.
I sound like I have it together. I do not have it together.
No, I know. We're all learning and growing. I'll get you out of here on this. Over the next year, what is something that like, just from a business sense, we're bouncing around from family to business, but just from a business sense, what is something that you feel like is kind of pressing on your mind or something that's challenging you to grow?
Challenging me to grow. I think there has been an insane amount of technological advancement in our industry. And it's overwhelming because I'm busy day to day trying to figure out what to prioritize. And so I've been thinking a lot about how to implement things like AI or things like VR even, or like all of these technological things that if I don't implement in the next 10 years, I'm going to be left behind. I've been learning more about that and trying to make sure I'm on top of it before it gets on ahead of me.
Yeah.
And day to day, that doesn't have like a very clear like call to action, you know, but long term, those are things that I'm keeping in my mind and definitely wanting to grow in that. And then there's been a really intentional growth in the internal processes of my business as well.
Yeah.
So I think I've gotten to the point where I understand how to create a seamless client process. And now I'm kind of building the back end to make sure it's easier for us to provide that in like a very clear, like duplicatable way, you know? So saving us time internally, but also making sure like clients and vendors that we work with are gonna understand what we're doing before we do it, because we do it the same way every single time. It's very systematic. I mean, obviously the designs will all lend themselves to different final products. But being really intentional about developing things well internally so that in the event we do expand or we are taking on more projects, we're doing it right every single time.
Well, and you said so I love processes and then I'm like terrible at recording them.
Yeah.
So another thing one of my business mentors has been telling me is like, I'm like, well, even, you know, why do I have to write out like a handbook, right, of processes if like I don't think we're going to be at 20 employees in the next couple of years? And he was like, well, actually think about it this way. And you hit the nail on the head, which is like, you want a repeatable experience for each client. Okay, well, what worked really well for the last client that you want to make sure you do again because we're busy. We have families, we have, you know, obligations, we have multiple clients. You have Kara, we've got a team at Refine. So it's like, how do you make sure each client gets the best experience possible? And that is through duplication of what really worked and analyzing, hey, this worked on this project, this didn't. Maybe I need to implement a change. And then I also like what you said, like with the vendors too, and having like a really healthy relationship with them, because for us, just like you, I mean, we provide the products, right, for someone to install. And I think you guys touch so much on the home right? And so like setting the vendors up for success is huge. And it's not because like you just want everyone to say like, oh, Kasey Smith's amazing to work for. And but you want that relationship because it's still Wilmington, it's still a small town, and you want to make sure that they trust you going into the next one, because you see a lot of the same
want
faces.
them to love their job too. I want them to be happy to working on
a
project with me.
Like, oh my gosh, this is a crazy design. Who designed this?
Yeah, I'm like, I'm sorry, I chose a tile that needs to be mitered again. That's like imperfect on the edges and specific grout lines.
But you talk about like looking at the industry and what the industry is doing. That's, we're getting into the weeds here, but the Zalige tile, right? And being mitered and what that looks like. And maybe the tile guys that are doing the project have not done that before.
I'm going to push you to get better by choosing the hardest tile.
But you handle that so well, which was like, it's an uncomfortable conversation just because like who's supposed to have it kind of thing. And it's like, hey, well, I want to get Tucker involved because I know he has experience doing this. And then me being able to, or us being able to have a conversation with the installer to coach him through it.
Yeah, thank you for doing that.
You're welcome. That's not where I was going with this, but I think you do such a great job at that. It's so important. That's like one of the duplicatable processes, is making sure that the installers are looked out for when they get there, because when the homeowners get to the job, you want to make sure it's clean, looks good, and your vision comes to life. So well, cool. Well, thank you. This has been really good. Thanks for coming out and talking to us.
Thank you. This was so fun.
We appreciate working with you.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you guys for tuning in to the Refining Exchange podcast. We hope you enjoyed it, and we look forward to bringing you the next one.